Welcome to Lost at 3 a.m. Put your phone down, close your eyes, and let this be the last story you hear tonight. You're safe, you're still, you're exactly where you need to be. Tonight, we're going to Hogwarts, not the loud, bustling version full of spellwork and chaos and Quidditch matches, but the quiet one, the one that exists after hours, when the torches flicker lower, the portraits settle into sleep, and the corridors stretch out like stories waiting to be told. This is the Hogwarts that lives in our memories, a castle tucked between mountains, hidden by magic, reached by train and lantern light, a place that feels more like a dream than a school, but somehow it still manages to feel like home. It's a school that doesn't just teach charms and potions, it teaches identity, it teaches where we belong, and it starts, for every student, with a choice, or something like a choice, a quiet moment beneath a weathered hat, the sorting, that first strange act of magic, where a piece of old fabric whispers in your ear and tells you who you are, or who you could be. Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff. 4 houses, 4 legacies, 4 different kinds of strength. For many of us, even outside the story, those houses became something more than fiction. They became mirrors, little reflections of who we are or who we were trying to be. We took quizzes, we argued with friends, we sorted ourselves again and again as if we were trying to find a corner of the wizarding world where we'd be understood. And maybe that's the magic of it. Not that it's real, but that it feels real. Like a sorting hat of our own is still out there somewhere, waiting to tell us that our traits, our stubbornness, our softness, our curiosity, our ambition aren't flaws. They're foundations. That's where we're headed tonight. Through the portraits and the passageways, into each common room, through the house colours, the values, the truths that sit quietly beneath them. This isn't a lesson, it's a slow unravelling of what it means to belong. So take a breath. Picture the castle, let the candlelight flicker, the robes rustle, the train whistle fade behind you. You're here now, and the sorting is about to begin. The hat looks old, faded, like something you'd find forgotten in an attic, tucked behind a trunk of robes and schoolbooks. Its fabric is worn thin, the brim drooping slightly like it's been through centuries of thoughts and still isn't quite done listening. But when you sit beneath it, something shifts. It's not just a hat, it's a voice, and not the kind that shouts or commands. It speaks slowly, gently, as if it already knows you, not the version of you you show to others, the one you've been practicing, but the one beneath that, the one you've barely met. The sorting hat was created long before any of us arrived at Hogwarts, a bit of enchantment left behind by the founders to ensure their legacy continued. But the magic they gave it wasn't just organisational, it was intuitive, empathetic, almost too good at seeing through the layers we build around ourselves. That's what makes the sorting so strange. Because it feels like a test, but it isn't. There are no right answers, no points to win. Just the question, who are you, really? And sometimes the answer comes easily. A bold heart, a sharp mind, a loyal soul. But more often than not, it's complicated. Because people are complicated. A little brave, a little curious, a little selfish, a little kind. And the hat doesn't just sort you based on who you are. It considers who you might become. That's why it pauses. That's why it whispers. Sometimes it sees ambition inside someone soft, bravery inside someone shy, and sometimes it lets you choose, because while it may know you, it also respects you. Even in its wisdom, it never forgets. We grow into ourselves, and no single moment should ever define us completely. Harry could have been in Slytherin. Hermione had the heart of a Ravenclaw. Neville, deep down, was braver than anyone expected. The hat saw all of that, and still it left room for choice. Because Hogwarts was never just about magic. It was about understanding the self, learning who we are, and learning who we're not. And the sorting hat is where that journey begins. Not with a spell or a wand, but with a conversation, a quiet one, between you and the voice that's been waiting to meet you. So wherever it places you, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, or Slytherin, know this. It's not a limit, it's not a box, it's a beginning. When people think of Gryffindor, they think of the bold ones, the heroes, the sword wielders and dragon tamers, the students who charge into danger with a roar, but courage doesn't always look like that. Sometimes it's not loud at all. Sometimes it's speaking up when your voice shakes. Sometimes it's standing up to your friends, not your enemies. Sometimes it's walking through a door you don't want to walk through, simply because you know someone has to. That's what Gryffindor really is. It's not about being fearless. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified, especially when you're terrified. Founded by Godric Gryffindor, the house values bravery, yes, but not just the flashy kind. It's about daring, nerve, and chivalry. Not chivalry in the old-fashioned showy sense, but in the way of standing up for others, protecting the vulnerable, acting on your convictions even when there's a cost. The Gryffindor common room is warm and open. High ceilings, golden lamps, a crackling fire. It feels like a place where stories are told. It's a space that asks you to try, to care, to act, sometimes recklessly, sometimes imperfectly, but always with your whole heart. Famous Gryffindors include Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, Ron Weasley, Minerva McGonagall, but they were all different kinds of brave. Harry risked his life again and again, but his greatest strength was his love for others. Hermione's courage came from knowledge and conviction, the refusal to let injustice slide. Ron stood beside his friends in the darkest moments, often afraid, but never walking away. And McGonagall? Her bravery was quiet, patient and firm, the kind that leads with a steady hand when everyone else is falling apart. That's what people often forget. Gryffindor isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to move forward anyway. It's not just for heroes, it's for the students who step forward when someone is being hurt, the ones who try again after failing, the ones who raise their hand when no one else will, the ones who say, "This isn't right," even if their voice is the only one saying it. And sometimes, bravery looks like letting go, walking away from a fight, admitting when you're wrong. Not every Gryffindor charges in with a sword. Some simply stay standing when the moment tries to knock them down. And that too is courage. When most people think of Slytherin, they think of villains, cold voices, sharp looks, secrets whispered in stone corridors. But the truth is softer, more complicated, and far more human than the stories ever admit. Slytherin House was founded by Salazar Slytherin, who valued ambition, resourcefulness, cleverness, and a certain self-protective cunning. He wanted students who could see the bigger picture, who could plan, lead, and adapt. And over time, those traits became misunderstood, not because they were dangerous, but because they weren't always easy to read. Slytherins don't show their hearts on their sleeves. They don't always say what they mean, but that doesn't mean they don't care. Quite the opposite. This is the house of legacy, of loyalty to the few, not the many, of quiet determination. Slytherins don't ask to be liked, they ask to be respected. And when they trust you, truly trust you, that bond is unshakable. The common room sits beneath the lake, glowing green and silver in the filtered light. It's cold, yes, but not unwelcoming. It's quiet, reflective, a space where ambition isn't something to hide, it's something to explore, safely, strategically, honestly. Ambition is often painted as greed, but in its purest form, it's hope. It's the belief that you're capable of something more, that your future is something you can build, shape, and protect. And that belief runs deep in Slytherins. Famous members of the house include Severus Snape, who sacrificed everything in silence. Regulus Black, who turned against Voldemort not with noise, but with a single devastating act of bravery. And even Slughorn, whose love of connection and memory showed a softer, more generous side to ambition. Not every Slytherin is good, but not every Gryffindor is either. That's the thing about Hogwarts Houses. They don't define who you are. They just illuminate the traits you lean toward when the world gets complicated. Slytherins are survivors, not because they don't feel fear, but because they know how to carry it without letting it break them. They're loyal, but only to those who earn it. And they're protective, not just of others, but of their own hearts. And maybe that's why they're so misunderstood. Because the world often celebrates people who wear their truth on the outside, and Slytherins keep theirs tucked just beneath the surface, like something fragile, or something sacred, high in one of Hogwarts' tallest towers, behind a door that doesn't open with a password, but with a riddle. You'll find the entrance to Ravenclaw House. It's not guarded by portraits or stone statues, just a question, one that changes every time, one that asks you to pause and think. Because Ravenclaw isn't just a house of intelligence, it's a house of wondering. Founded by Rowena Ravenclaw, this house is often defined by wit, wisdom, and academic skill, but there's more to it than that. Ravenclaws aren't simply the ones who get the best grades or read the most books. They're the ones who think differently, who stay curious even when there's no reward for it. They're the ones who see patterns where others don't, who find comfort in unanswered questions, who live not in absolutes, but in maybes and what-ifs. The Ravenclaw common room is wide and circular, with arched windows and endless sky. At night, the stars feel close enough to touch. It's quiet there, not just because the students are studying, but because silence isn't seen as a gap, it's seen as a space to think, to imagine, to explore. Famous Ravenclaws include Luna Lovegood, who saw the world in ways no one else could, and didn't care if they understood her. She didn't speak to impress, she spoke to express, and in her gentleness, there was brilliance. There's also Cho Chang, who reminded us that intelligence doesn't make you invulnerable. She was smart, kind, and deeply human. Her emotions didn't contradict her house, they completed it. Because Ravenclaw isn't about being cold or distant, it's about being open to thought, and thought comes in all forms: emotional, intuitive, logical, abstract. There's no one kind of smart. That's the secret of this house. It doesn't ask you to know everything. It just asks you to keep asking. To Ravenclaws, knowledge isn't a trophy, it's a trail. And every answer is just the start of a better question. So if you've ever stayed up too late, thinking about something no one else seemed to notice, if you've ever felt more comfortable in your head than in a room full of noise, if you've ever wanted to understand rather than win, then maybe you already know. You'd fit just fine behind that riddle-locked door. Down near the kitchens, behind a stack of barrels and a rhythm tapped gently on wood, sits the entrance to Hufflepuff House. No riddles, no passwords, just a soft knock, a pattern, a moment of care. And that's the heart of Hufflepuff. It's the house that rarely makes the headlines. It doesn't seek glory or chase danger. It doesn't ask for attention, but it's always there, steady, open, warm. Founded by Helga Hufflepuff, the house welcomed those who didn't quite fit the sharper lines of the other founders' ideals. Not because they had less to offer, but because they offered something different, something gentler, patience, loyalty, fairness, kindness that isn't performative, it's practical, the sort of kindness that brings you a cup of tea when you didn't realize you needed one, that waits with you through your storm without needing to fix it, that remembers your favorite flower, that stands up quietly when no one else does. The Hufflepuff common room is unlike any other. Low ceilings, rounded corners, plants spilling from every ledge. It feels more like a home than a hall, a place to curl up, to rest, to be. There's always food nearby, always laughter, always room for one more. Famous Hufflepuffs include Cedric Diggory, brave but not boastful, strong but not cruel. The kind of person who wins without needing to crush someone else to do it. And Nymphadora Tonks, whose humour and heart never dulled her courage, even in the darkest moments. Hufflepuffs don't always get the spotlight. But when everything else falls apart, they're the ones holding things steady. They don't need recognition to do what's right. They just do it. And that's what makes this house so powerful. In a world that moves fast and praises loudness, Hufflepuff asks you to slow down, to care deeply, to choose compassion, even when it's not convenient, even when it goes unnoticed. Not all strength is fire. Sometimes it's soil, rich, quiet, patient, the kind that helps everything else grow. So if you've ever been the person people rely on, the one who stays a little longer, listens a little deeper, forgives a little more than most, if you've ever felt overlooked but never bitter, if you've ever chosen kindness when it would have been easier not to, then maybe Hufflepuff has already claimed you, and you didn't even have to knock. The Sorting Hat makes it sound simple. One name, one house, one path. But people aren't that simple. We're not made of just one thing. We're full of contradictions, brave and unsure, curious and quiet, loyal and ambitious, all at once. And so many students, both in the books and in the hearts of readers everywhere, feel it. That pull between houses, that sense of being a little too much of one thing and not quite enough of another. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's the point. Hermione Granger had the mind of a Ravenclaw. Every teacher saw it. Her grades, her logic, her thirst for knowledge. But she didn't end up in Ravenclaw. She chose Gryffindor because her courage, her values, her heart, they spoke just a little louder. Harry had qualities of Slytherin, determination, resourcefulness, leadership. The Sorting Hat saw it, but Harry chose not to lean into that part of himself, and that choice mattered. Neville didn't feel brave, not at first, but bravery isn't about never being afraid. It's about being afraid and showing up anyway, and the Hat saw what he didn't see yet. That's the quiet magic of it all. The Sorting Hat isn't there to define you, it's there to reflect you. And sometimes, that reflection shows more than one path, because you're more than one thing. Even outside the story, when people take quizzes or try to figure out what house they'd be in, there's often hesitation, a sense that the answer could change depending on the day, depending on the year, depending on who you're becoming. And that's okay. You're not static. You're growing, learning, unfolding. You might be a Ravenclaw who leads with Hufflepuff kindness, a Slytherin who loves like a Gryffindor who dreams like a Ravenclaw, or all of those things at once. Your house might not be a label, it might be a lens, a way of understanding yourself, not completely, but more clearly. So if you've ever felt caught between answers, if you've ever thought, I'm not just one thing, if you've ever hesitated while trying to name who you are, that's not confusion, that's complexity, and that's where the most magical parts of you live. Sometimes, it's easy to forget that the Hogwarts houses are more than colours and traits, they're stories, and the best way to understand a story is to look at the people inside it. Because every famous witch or wizard who came from a house brought something different to it. They didn't just reflect their house, they reshaped what we thought that house could mean. Let's begin with Gryffindor. We think of Harry first, the chosen one, the brave one, but his courage wasn't flashy, it was steady. He didn't love the spotlight. He often walked into danger simply because he couldn't stand the idea of someone else getting hurt. Then there's Hermione, often mistaken as someone who should have been a Ravenclaw, but her bravery wasn't about battles, it was in her beliefs, fighting for house elves, standing up to her teachers, staying behind to fight when she could have taken the easier path. And Neville, the quiet one, the boy who barely believed in himself until the very end, but when the time came, he stood when others fell. And in that moment, he reminded us that some of the greatest acts of courage come from the people we least expect. Now, Slytherin. Severus Snape is complicated, deeply flawed, but fiercely loyal in his own quiet way. His choices weren't always right, but his commitment never wavered. He showed us that love can be messy, and sacrifice doesn't always come with applause. and Regulus Black, a name we barely knew until we learned the truth. He turned against Voldemort from the inside, died for it, and never asked anyone to remember him. A Slytherin whose ambition led him to betrayal, but whose loyalty brought him redemption. Then there's Slughorn, social, proud, maybe a bit vain, but kind, thoughtful. He valued greatness but not cruelty. His Slytherinness was full of nuance, not menace, and that matters too. Ravenclaw gave us Luna Lovegood. Not the kind of intelligent that shows up on tests, but the kind that asks questions no one else thinks to ask. The kind that listens to things others ignore. She was soft, strange, and unafraid of either. Her mind wasn't just sharp, it was open. Cho Chang too, often remembered for her grief, her tears. But intelligence isn't cold. She was kind, honest, brave in ways that didn't come with a wand duel. Her emotional strength was just as real as anything learned in a textbook. And then there's Hufflepuff, Cedric Diggory, quietly excellent, fair in competition, generous in victory. A Hufflepuff who proved that kindness and strength are not opposites, they're allies. He didn't just earn respect, he gave it freely. And Tonks, fierce, funny, a little clumsy, and entirely unforgettable. Her loyalty ran so deep it cost her everything, but she never hesitated. Because love, to a Hufflepuff, is something you protect with your whole heart. These characters remind us that the houses aren't boxes, they're starting points. No one fits perfectly, and those who do something unexpected often show us something we hadn't seen before. Hogwarts is a castle built with magic, but it's also built with intention. Every hallway, every portrait, every hidden passageway says something about the people who walk its floors. And nowhere is that more true than in the 4 house common rooms. Each one is more than a resting place. It's a kind of mirror, a space shaped around the heart of the house itself. Gryffindor's common room is warm and tall, with red and gold everywhere you look. The fireplace is almost always lit, crackling with a kind of steady, restless energy. It feels like a place for debates, for storytelling, for bold plans whispered over late-night cocoa. The furniture is cozy, but lived in, like it's been through 100 daring adventures and is just catching its breath. This is a room where courage isn't just taught, it's practiced, where even the quietest students learn how to speak a little louder, where bravery grows not just in battle, but in belonging. Slytherin's common room sits beneath the lake. The walls curve low, bathed in greenish light. There's a stillness here, a quiet confidence, the kind of place where ambition doesn't need to announce itself. It simply exists like the stone and the shadows. The furniture is elegant, cool to the touch, but not unkind. There's room here for strategy, for solitude, for study, a place where you can build the person you're becoming, brick by deliberate brick. Ravenclaw's common room is high above the rest of the castle, a wide circular tower with tall windows that look out onto sky and stars. The walls are lined with books, of course, but it's not just a library, it's a sanctuary for thought. There's a hush in the air, not silence exactly, but the kind of stillness that welcomes questions. You get the feeling that in this room, no idea is too strange, no theory too far-fetched. Curiosity isn't just allowed, it's expected. And then there's Hufflepuff, tucked low near the kitchens. Filled with round doors and golden light, it feels instantly safe. There are plants on the windowsills, cushions in every corner. It smells like cinnamon and soft earth. It's not extravagant, but it's full of care. This room wraps around you like a hug, not to hold you back, but to remind you that you're not alone. That kindness has a place. That rest is just as sacred as work. Each common room reflects the soul of its house, not just in decoration, but in how it makes you feel, what it values, what it protects. And maybe, if you're quiet enough, you can feel which one feels most like home. It's been years since we first stepped into Hogwarts, since that first sorting ceremony, since we watched a boy with a lightning scar walk down a long stone corridor and begin the story that changed so many of us. And still Somehow, the houses remain. They live on in bracelets and notebooks, fan art and forum debates, personality quizzes and quiet conversations between friends. People still ask, "What house are you?" Not to judge, not to divide, but to understand, to connect. Because the house system was never just about magical schooling. It was about giving shape to something harder to explain. The different ways people move through the world, the values they carry, the kind of strength they lead with, and the kind they're still learning to find. It's comforting, in a way, to feel like you belong to something, to know that your qualities, whether bold or gentle, driven or dreamy, aren't just noticed, but celebrated. That someone, somewhere, would have looked at the way you think, or the way you care, or the way you try, and said, yes, you belong here. And maybe that's why the houses still matter. Not because they sort us into perfect categories, but because they remind us that there are many kinds of magic. Some of it is loud and brave. Some of it is quiet and kind. Some of it questions. Some of it plans. And all of it matters. So wherever you'd be sorted, whether you're sure or still searching, know this: there is room for you at Hogwarts, in a common room, lit just right, with a seat saved and a fire going, and someone, maybe just a little like you, waiting to say welcome. Thank you for spending your night with Lost at 3 a.m. Sleep well, and good night.